Welcome to The Explainer. I want you to take a deep breath with me for a second, because today we're tackling a really heavy burden, one that so many of us just kind of carry in silence. If you're a procrastinator, you probably know that exhausting weight of guilt, right? It's that quiet, relentless voice in your head telling you that you're lazy, that you're just not trying hard enough, or maybe that everything is literally just harder for you than it is for everyone else. It is a heavy, heavy load to carry. But today, we're going to completely reframe that experience. We're going to look at the deep, hidden science behind exactly why you delay, and more importantly, how to stop it for good. All right, let's dive right in. So, have you ever felt like the world is basically divided into two distinct groups? On one side, you've got people who can handle stress. They succeed, they build these great lives, they absolutely conquer their to-do lists. And then, on the other side, people who just can't handle stress. They feel like constant failures, struggling their entire lives just to keep up. Well, trauma-informed life strategist Alyssa Smith realized something huge. Those groups, they're completely made up. They aren't real. Procrastination is absolutely not a character flaw. It is not a sign that you belong to some doomed, unsuccessful group. Which brings us to Section 1, the procrastination myth. It's actually a coping mechanism. See, for a lot of overachievers out there, waiting until the absolute last second to start a project isn't about being lazy at all. It's actually this agonizing, incredibly sophisticated coping mechanism to avoid the deep fear of judgment. Think about it. If you wait until there is literally only 1 minute left before a deadline, you don't really have to sit with that agony and fear for very long, do you? You avoid the pain of potential failure right up until the last possible second. And this brilliantly illustrates the real danger here. The source material puts it perfectly. Procrastination was the canary in the coal mine. That seemingly innocent negative self-talk, that bad habit of leaving things to the last minute, it's actually a distress signal from your brain. Alyssa Smith points out that ignoring these warnings can completely derail everything you've worked for. Sometimes it even leads us to accept emotional abuse just because our inner voice is already telling us we aren't good enough. Your procrastination is waving a massive red flag, basically begging you to pay attention to a deeper system at work.
Moving on to Section 2. Meet tiny T trauma, the hidden distress.
All right, so now that we know procrastination is a distress signal, we have to look at what's actually causing the distress in the first place. And I really want this to be a safe space for us to reframe some terminology here. Let's walk through this sliding scale. When most of us hear the word trauma, we immediately jump to step 1, big T trauma. We're talking major, violent, unthinkable things like war, natural disasters, or domestic violence. Then in step 2, we have little T trauma. These are non-violent situations, sure, but they still cause a massive amount of emotional distress. Think intense bullying or the deep grief of losing a pet. But step 3 is the sneaky one, tiny T trauma. And it's the one most people have absolutely no idea they're even dealing with. But your nervous system, it responds to all of these, not just the massive, obvious tragedies. So the precise definition of tiny T trauma is little unmet childhood needs that cause your brain to create negative self-beliefs. This isn't necessarily about grand traumatic events. It could be something as subtle as growing up in a home where you were only ever rewarded or praised when you performed perfectly. Or, it could simply be watching your parents work themselves to the absolute bone without ever taking a break. These little unmet needs, they quietly shape your core beliefs about yourself and how you think you have to act just to survive in the world.
This leads us to Section 3, your brain on stress. Let's look at the physiological mechanics.
So how exactly do those unmet needs from childhood turn into the adult who, say, can't start a presentation until 2 a.m. the night before it's due? Well, look at the distinct roles of your brain hemispheres. Your right brain is your survival primal brain. Its one and only focus is to keep you safe and, frankly, not let you die. Now, your left brain is your logical, rational brain, the part that handles high-level decision-making and, calculus. But here's the catch. In a perceived emergency, your right brain is built to completely take over. It initiates that classic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And to do that efficiently, it literally tells your logical left brain to take a hike. When your brain senses stress, it shifts into pure survival mode. And suddenly, you go looking for every ridiculous excuse not to sit down and do your work.
Relying on that stress-fueled, last-minute panic energy to get things done is a survival tool, for sure. But it's completely backward. Imagine running a race and constantly tripping over your untied shoelaces. Would your strategy be to just carry around a box of Band-Aids to dress your wounds every time you fall? Of course not. You just tie your shoelaces before the race, right? Procrastination is the Band-Aid. It temporarily makes you feel safe from the fear of failure or judgment, but it gives you absolutely no shot at actually winning the race in the long run.
All right, Section 4, real-life procrastination triggers.
Let's look at some everyday examples.
So, how do these invisible childhood expectations actually sabotage highly capable adults today? Let's examine our first case study from the source material. Francesca. She was absolutely killing it at work, but she was chronically, and I mean chronically, late. No amount of alarms or self-bullying could get her out the door on time. Well, it turns out Francesca is naturally a free spirit, but her childhood was filled with intense pressure and constant reminders to be grown up and organized. So every time she had to be at work on time, it triggered that tiny T trauma. Her inner free spirit completely rebelled against being bossed around, resulting in her subconsciously sabotaging her own mornings.
And then we have Amani. Amani really wanted to build her dream kitchen. She had the mood boards, the plans, the whole shebang. But years went by and no kitchen. Why? Because her tiny T trauma was rooted in a childhood feeling that she just wasn't as smart as the other kids. To protect herself from failing, she developed this intense need for perfect planning and unlimited time. By endlessly delaying the kitchen project, she could always blame a lack of time rather than risk giving it her all and potentially feeling like a failure. Her procrastination wasn't laziness. It was a perfectly designed protective shield.
Which brings us to Section 5, rewiring the nervous system. This is all about creating safety.
So, how do we actually fix this? We're going to look at a highly practical physical solution to finally get you out of this trap. But first, we have to accept a somewhat harsh biological reality here. You cannot perform at your best with half a brain. When you rely on the crutch of last-minute procrastination, your survival right brain has totally hijacked the system. Your logical left brain is literally offline. You have an acute biological imbalance. Sure, you might get the project done just under the wire, but you are operating at a massive disadvantage. We need to regain that balance by bringing your logical brain back online.
And here is exactly how you do it. We're going to physically activate the vagus nerve, which commands the calming response in your brain. You can actually even try this with me right now. Step 1. Just rub your hands together in front of your face. Step 2. Place those warm hands right on your cheeks and neck. Give a little soothing pressure and take a deep, slow breath. Okay, now rub your hands together again. Step 3. Cross your arms, give your shoulders or just above your elbows a gentle squeeze and take another deep breath.
What you're doing in that moment is actually profound. You are completely bypassing your survival coping mechanisms. You're directly sending a biological message of safety straight to your primal brain. And the best part? You can use this physical tool anytime, sitting at your desk, right before a big presentation, or whenever you feel that sudden urge to put something off. When you create physical safety, you no longer need the mental crutch of procrastination. You can finally stop working so endlessly hard just to survive.
Which leaves us with one final, vital question to ask ourselves today. What could you achieve if you untied your procrastination? Imagine your future if you were prepared, rested, and actually had your full energy to tackle life, instead of draining it away in a relentless panic cycle. You have the tools now to calm your nervous system, to tie your shoelaces before the race even begins. The potential waiting on the other side of that safety, it is absolutely limitless. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly can't wait to see what you achieve.